will just say a little bit of the research we are doing, and I wanted to also discuss later on music for sustainability and music as sustainability. That could be a nice track also for our next meeting. Next slide, please. Just a couple of things on the audiences that we are measuring, and as you see on the logos here, it's the Karolinska Institute. I'm affiliated to the neuroscience department and also the Royal College of Music. Next slide, please. And what we have seen in school children audiences, adult audiences, and elderly listeners, there are some differences. Next slide, please. We use this very simple visual analog scale for audiences up to 400 people, just to find out what is going on pre and post a concert. Next slide, please. And we can see that strong musical experiences have the capacity to significantly affect the life of people across all those ages I showed you, school classes, elderly and middle ages. So the strongest positive reaction we observe when listening to live music. So we now know that related to the recorded pieces. And we also see that we can use this VAS evaluation in different concerts. Also, we call it knowledge concerts, that we evaluate different themes that are quite hard to target, such as the Me Too theme. We use music, and we have satellite seminars in relation to musical concert to be able to talk about hard things. Next slide, please. So we have also had the inner sound audiences, of course. Next slide, please. And we have been measuring difference like procrastination, which is a very common theme, unfortunately, in higher education programs, especially among women. And we use those themes in relation then to different musical concerts, just to evoke the interest and also to start and buffer different hard discussions related to a theme that can be very shameful. Next slide, please. And other audiences is, as we have seen, we have measured daily worries. Next slide, please. So we saw that listening to music can help to distract from worries about ongoing life problems. We see, for example, the question, to what extent does music listening alleviate worry and under what circumstances? And when we have targeted those questions, we see that we can increase the audiences when we spread the knowledge from those kinds of research projects. Next slide, please. And also we have other audiences, of course, and in hospice we have been doing work in Russia. Next slide, please. We have been following patients in end-of-life situations, and we have asked questions about what kind of music would you like to listen to, and why is that important to choose or pick a subjective choice, live and also recorded pieces. And as we see here in the figures, we see that there is an increase in the Kairos time perception when it comes to classical live music for people in end-of-life situations. So the Chronos perspective disappears. Next slide, please. So, and also we are measuring the interplay between musicians and the audiences. So we are follow the variable of flow. Next slide, please. The variable of flow, we are measuring the mutual interplay, and we are following emotional, behavioral, and also different physiological synchronization in relation to individuals and collective flow experiences. So why are we interested in measuring flow? Yes, because flow is related to health aspects of different kinds, and we following in the heart rate variability and also different scales to be able to understand how the mirroring processes can affect in between musicians, but also in between musicians and their audiences. Next slide, please. So we also, next slide please, have nature-related audiences. Of course, we use musicians in nature, and what is the difference? We see that we can embody nature and music at the same time, and we put the humanity in perspective. So those kinds of outdoor audiences is a new context for our. Yes, so we can measure different kinds of perception. Of course, the verbal, the cognitive parts with different scales, questionnaires, but also visual, emotional, sensory and auditory and motor actions. We use video recordings, we use hormonal analysis by blood test pre and post concerts, and we also do different emotional evaluations. Next slide, please. And here we can understand why this works with how we can get affected from a piece of music that we hear sitting in the audience. We have the thalamus in the middle of number 2 here in the brain, and it goes down to the amygdala. And in the amygdala, there is the emotional reflection and response, which goes directly out into the body. So there sometimes is very hard to interpret, analyze the affects. So this is what we talk about when we talk about music and health effects in body. Next slide, please. Yes, and also, of course, the mirror neuron mechanism. This is what we try to understand more about when we use the flow measurements. And also, next slide, please. We have different hypothesis testing. We can discuss this because I know that my time is out. So the biological markers, but also the socioeconomic markers related to the Agenda 2030 is very important that we follow at our school in Stockholm, Sweden. Thank you very much.